Ho, ho, ho! Merry New Year! I am, as ever, joined here in the lonesome, small hideaway that we call Bulldog Towers. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Claire, how are you?
Hi, Marek. I'm not bad. How are you?
Yes, not too bad, thank you very much. This damn infernal cold is holding me back, but never mind. Ben, how are you?
Have no fear, it's the new year. I'm very good, thanks. I've started my new year gym membership. Well, I started it yesterday, I cancelled it this morning.
Do you need a membership to be a friend of Jim?
Yeah, he's very exclusive.
Jolly good. So your gym membership didn't last any longer than the interregnum of presidents.
Exactly that. I mean, I'm thinking about exercise, but the weight just stays on. I don't really know how this exercising thing works. I'm probably doing it wrong.
That in itself is progress, I'm led to believe. Claire, have you got any resolutions that you have resolutely failed to adhere to?
Actually, this year I've decided not to make any. I'm going to keep up with the one I made last year.
So you've resolved to not make any resolutions?
Whether she thinks she's postmodern or not, I'm not too sure.
No, I just couldn't think of anything, to be honest.
There you go. There you go.
Give up, giving up.
My resolution this year is to provide more help and assistance and guidance to our students.
Hooray.
It's very noble of you, Marek.
Well, above and beyond the call of duty, Claire, that's all I can say. So what we've decided to do this month is actually put down your pen and paper, relax, because we are not going to test you or quiz you. We're not going to make you do listening exercises. We're going to give you a series of heartfelt, and handy hints as to how to maintain and continually improve your English skills. Isn't that right?
Well, this year on the Chinese calendar is the year of English. Usually it's an animal, but this year it is the year of English.
I thought it was the year of the cockerel.
No, well, the English cockerel, yes.
Claire, do you have the internet to hand while Ben is spouting this utter nonsense?
No. Well, I could get it to hand, but...
If we can call upon our resident fact checker.
Forget about the internet. We don't need it. I'm here. I'm more or less like the original internet. Before the internet, I am older than the internet as well. So
0011100011111.
That is my nickname. So anyway, we're going to provide our listener with various different alternative methods of making this year your year to dominate the English language.
This is the false friend translation from Spanish, isn't it? Dominar, to dominate the language.
But I mean it quite literally. You can make English your
you know what?
B star sign TCH.
Rooster.
It is
so
the
cockerel,
rooster.
there you see.
Can I just say, Ben, 1-0 in your face.
It's 1-0 to me. Or?
No, it's a Chinese year of the rooster or cockerel. Yes. Why did I know that? Because it is the emblem of my beloved Tottenham Hotspur, and obviously we're going to win the league. This is going to come back and haunt me,
Is it an omen? No, is it an
No,
omen?
no, that's a film.
That's a bad thing, isn't it? It's a sign. That's also a film.
She's good. She's good. She's good. So
You've changed. I don't know what happened over Christmas, but did you watch some films? Is that what happened?
New Year's resolution. That's a joke.
Well, we're going to go one by one and give some of our top tips for improving, developing your English this year. The type of advice that we feel as teachers you don't really find in the books and various websites that make lots of money out of their teaching techniques. Type of alternative advice that we have collated over years of experience, and also the type of advice that we think is a little bit more fun than just sitting down with your nose in a book. So who's going to go first? Claire, would you like to kick off with some of
Me, I guess.
Yeah, your pearls of wisdom?
So I guess my tips are ones that I've used as a language learner. Because obviously all of us are learning Spanish, or have been learning Spanish.
Occasionally.
¿Qué dices?
Okay.
Sacre
So-
bleu, mon Dieu.
So, the two tips I have, well, one tip and one kind of more general piece of advice are things that I've used myself. The first one I had was to keep your vocabulary visible. So, what I mean by that is we've all been in class and we've heard a new phrase or a new word and thought, oh, that's a good word, that's useful. I'll totally be able to use that. We write it down in our little notebooks, then we close the notebook and we go home and we never see it or use it again.
She is literally unstitching one of my pieces of advice as we speak.
Ah.
So, what I'm saying, don't make me laugh. What I'm saying is, what I used to do when I was in Erasmus for Spanish is when we learned a new word, it started off with just basic things like things in our house, cutlery, mirrors. We'd stick a post-it.
Dead bodies.
On occasion, depends what the night before had been like.
I've just got this image of this mad apartment covered in post-it notes.
Well, I'm not
She
joking.
hasn't even got there yet.
We used to, that's Ben spoiled the whole idea. We used to stick post-it notes on things that we didn't know
Dead
how
bodies.
to say what the word was in Spanish. But it doesn't have to be that excessive. You don't have to stick post-it notes all over your house. But somewhere near your bed or near your desk, you hear a new word and you think, I like that word, stick it up. Don't write the translation.
Don't
This
write
is
the
very good.
translation.
Just
Okay.
stick the word up. And if you look at it and you go, oh, I don't know what that was, go and look it up. Still don't write translation. And eventually you'll see the word and you go, oh yeah, that means that. And it'll stick in your mind.
So you're trying to create a visual stimulus.
keep it
a
visual. Visible.
connection in your learnt language, in your
Yeah.
second, third, whatever language it is.
The
We
second,
have to say
yeah.
that Claire's Spanish is superior to ours, and we haven't used the obsessive post-it method. So maybe that's what we're doing wrong. Maybe we should start to stick post-its on things around our houses, Ben. Maybe next time I meet you and your delightful young man, your girlfriend, for coffee, she'll have a post-it on her forehead
I found
Big
one
question.
No, Bia.
with a question mark. Just what is this? I don't know the word for it.
I found one on the back of my jacket once at school, and I can tell you what, it did not say teacher, but it did begin with a T.
I thought you were going to say it said kick this or kick me.
It was you, wasn't it?
Anyway, there's a second step to this which is probably very obvious, but use the phrase. So try and make an effort to use whatever the word or phrase is when you're practicing. It's
So use your vocabulary
Yeah.
in context to develop these synaptic links between the new vocabulary and
But
what
this
the
is
thing
this is very important in a sense, isn't it? Because we all know from our experience of learning a language at school, and French is probably the best case study for us. I guarantee all three of us now, if we had to do a rapid fire French vocabulary quiz, we'd all remember words for campsite equipment
animals.
and animals. And places on the west coast of France where our fictitious pen pals all lived. You're right, it is about practical, useful vocabulary. Now, this ties nicely into some of the things that I wanted to suggest people do, which is very much take control of your learning. There is a habit of people to bury their nose in books. And you know this, you know how this works. The good students. You know, you open up their textbooks or their notebooks and it's immaculate, it's all neat, tidy notes, and there's highlighter everywhere. And you know, you end up with a situation, you're looking through the grammar notes of their book and every phrase has been highlighted. And so you think, no, take control in a sense. You don't have to swallow the entire grammar reference. You need to be able to recognise the language that is practical and applicable to your daily life. So the first way you do that is, in your own language, make some notes over the course of a few days, maybe about a week, of the average daily, regular, continual conversations that you have. And then sit down over the weekend and think to yourself, can I have these conversations in English? Where do the stumbling blocks in my language come up? Which effectively leads you to what I call self-diagnostic learning. identifying the gaps in your vocabulary and your grammar. Is this ringing any bells with a practical approach for you guys, or you're just looking at your mobiles to make me feel small?
No, absolutely. I mean, I often, when I'm in a situation where I have to use Spanish, I often find gaps, obvious gaps in my understanding of the language, and I walk away from that situation thinking I must learn that quite essential verb that I'm missing from my vocabulary. I never do though.
Yeah.
That's rule number 3. Don't be like Ben. Dedicate yourself.
Ben, me and Claire have done very earnest and honest presentations, brief
I'm
on,
done.
on
Finished. That's
genuine tips. And your tip to my mum out there listening to us is don't be like me.
Yeah.
Don't be
That's
like
it.
Ben. Brilliant.
There's only enough room for one incredibly handsome chap
Brilliant.
in this studio.
Okay. So do you actually have any practicable advice to give, or shall I go back to Claire to give some more?
I do, yes, and I think it ties in nicely with both of the things that you've said. My advice is quite simple. I think all of the things that we would like to say, the things that we would like to promote, are very, very obvious. They're very, very basic pieces of advice, but
Make Ansel great again.
people need to be reminded because it's so easy to lose motivation and run out of steam when you're faced with books and books of grammar specifically. My advice is thus: keep it English. So what I mean by that is you need to have a dedicated routine to your studies. You need to have a time. It doesn't have to be the same time every day, but you need to acknowledge the fact that you're going to dedicate a specific amount of time to your studying, and that time is your English hour or your English 20 minutes if you've only got 20 minutes, if you're very busy, but you need to be absolutely dedicated to that.
I would add to that slightly. I'm sure maybe Claire has an opinion on this as well. I would say not necessarily. I think it's a brilliant idea. I totally agree. 20 minutes a day, maybe after a couple of weeks, 25 minutes a day. You can increase your time as you go. But I wouldn't necessarily set it aside simply as studying. For me,
No.
the key for English is
I'm
practice.
not finished.
Oh,
This
well,
is
I beg your pardon.
this is your immersive time, and when I say immersive, I mean that you have to shut out any kind of distractions from your native language. So you
like
need
an
to,
English isolation tank,
yeah,
if you will.
basically you have to explore not just the language. I think it's very useful to learn a little bit about the culture related to not British English, American English, whatever your direction is that you're taking. But you should learn a little bit about the culture. And I was thinking about this recently. I was thinking about the different ways that you can stimulate your learning through the different senses. So obviously you have visual, which is watching TV series, watching films, things like that. Listening, there's so many different things that you can do with listening, which I'm gonna give some examples of things that you can listen to in a moment. But generically,
listen to Ben.
podcasts like this one or any other, there are so many on any topic you can imagine.
I always tell my students that the internet is big, yes, but in English it's bigger.
Exactly.
I always recommend BBC Radio 4 without exception to anybody. You will always find something you are interested in.
I think we'll go through a list of different things that we can recommend in a moment.
Okay.
So that's the ears and the eyes. Moving on to
The nose.
the nose. I
He hasn't
honestly
prepared anything for the nose.
I honestly didn't know what to say for the nose. I don't know.
Well, why don't
Smell
you
English
use the
book.
nose
Print off a
after
picture of the Queen and sniff it. I don't know.
do the mouth one
taste.
first?
Please notice, ladies and gentlemen, a picture of the Queen.
Yes, the Queen.
Not our Queen. Not
No,
a Queen.
Not Freddie Mercury.
Not yet. Not Queen the band without the definitive article. Notice there is only a definitive article in front of one Queen. The Queen.
Exactly. That's why they call it Great Britain.
Exactly.
It's great.
It's not called Great Spain, is it? No.
Anyway, taste. My recommendation.
There's lots of taste in England. Yeah.
is that most countries, I think, have a very negative perspective of this British stereotype that we can't cook. But I'm not just talking about Britain. I'm talking about English-speaking culture. So that does, unfortunately, include America. Explore recipes from
It's going to be great. It's going to be great.
English-speaking
It's going to be great.
English-speaking countries. I mean, you print off the recipe, you go through the instructions in English, you cook it, you eat it, and you go.
And then you can smell it, and there you go. You've covered
You
the
can
nose.
smell it as well. Yeah, you can touch it. You
Well,
can stick your finger in
it
there.
is funny. It's funny, actually, because one of the best recommendations for TV shows to start watching when you're in that learning stage, you're not quite confident enough to use language in its full force, but you have the desire and the energy to do so, is cooking programs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because you have the visual context, you
Yep.
have the ability to. You can very quickly, in context, isolate the language. You can see which verbs refer to which actions as they're doing them, and you can see which grammar, which vocabulary refers to which nouns.
And I
It's-
think it's very clear the kind of structures, the grammatical structures that they use in the instructions.
Absolutely.
You can learn some very interesting ways of expressing yourself. And talking about cooking programs, I mean, you always have these flamboyant presenters, and when they stick a spoon of something gorgeous in their mouth, they'll say, "Oh, that is absolutely wonderlicious."
I do like Ben's appropriate use of the word gorgeous there. Gorgeous is a beautiful word in English, and I have found that the Spanish struggle to understand how we can use such a delightfully tasting word in the mouth to describe all kinds of things. The attractiveness of a lady, the pleasure.
Or of a man.
Or a man can be gorgeous. Oh, you're
Gorgeous,
gorgeous. Exactly. It is a word that is used to describe something that is very nice on multiple sense levels. Do be warned, though, if you're going to take on board some cookery shows to help you with your English and follow Ben's advice of cooking along with them, for example, with recipes. Nigella Lawson, very gorgeous, very buxom, and very sensual with her vocabulary. Lots of double entendre there, but you do have to basically have a £4 million house in a very specific 3-mile radius of London with special Queen's-provided grocery shops to get all the ingredients for her food. You know, she says, this is something you can just use with the veal that's lying around in the parlour. What? Sorry?
Well, if you follow a basic recipe, I think something that can pull all of these things together very easy is bring all of your English immersion hours together and have a little get-together with your friends, have a little party, cook some English food or some American
Some
food.
nosh.
Yeah, some nice nosh. And something that we do, actually, quite often, I'm going to admit this on air, as it were, play a board game. Play a game in English, read the instructions in English, and then argue with each other in English about who's wrong and who's right and why, and push your English language to its limits with a belly full of steak and kidney pie.
Be warned that British food especially is designed as slow-release carbohydrate comfort food in cold weather, so be aware that you are going to feel extraordinarily stuffed.
You'll need a lot of alcohol to get through it.
Well, Ben and I again can speak from brutal personal experience that we had a delightful English-themed lunch rather than a dinner, which was the first mistake, in which we ate a lot of rather filling carbohydrate material and then had to walk quite quickly as well to go to another appointment. And did I spend 45 minutes lying on a sofa when we got there?
We were on separate sofas and we communicated with each other through groans.
Through grunts.
Just,
It was even too much of a challenge to loosen the belt. Do not, I repeat, do not have English winter fare in peak June in Spain. That is my warning. Claire, could you give us some more English tip advice?
Some more English tip advice. Well, I would say something that you said, which I'm going to agree with partly. You said, don't stick your nose in a book.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's so bad to stick your nose in a book as long as it's maybe not a grammar book.
Mm-hmm. That's a good
Why not
point.
pick up a novel
That's
or
an excellent
an
point.
autobiography, or just pick up a book related to one of your interests, or a magazine, and read it, because let's face it, when we're reading in class and it's the standard text, they're mostly dead boring.
Mm-hmm.
So if you pick up
Or
something
about climate change.
or about climate change, yeah, or politics or something. But if you pick up something that you're interested in, if that happens to be politics or sport, then you're going to be much more inclined to read it.
This is something I was going to say about listening material as well. I, for example,
Same, yeah.
context is key. There are podcasts out there, for example, where people do reviews of the Spanish football weekend results in English. So if you find something you have a familiar context with and you enjoy, your brain will push it that extra step.
Can we give some examples of those podcasts? I'd like to just jump in and drop my examples in, and then you can add to them.
No, we'll put the examples in the text below. It's all fine, Ben.
We'll give them a list.
We'll give them a list. We'll give them a list. We don't need to sit and listen to you reading out a list of things like some sort of classified football results. You know, I can see it happening now.
All right,
this
then.
one is very good.
Well,
this one is also good.
Just to add to what Claire said about reading a book that isn't a grammar book, one of my students the other day said that she was out shopping and she picked up a book and she read the back cover and she went, I can read that. That's easy. And then she got home, read the first page with a dictionary next to her, and it took her an hour to get to the bottom of the first page, and she just threw the book on a shelf. I'm never touching it again.
This is also something that is worth considering. Therefore, yes, being interested in it, but there's a couple of things to know your level, understand what your capabilities are. If you have to swim through it with a dictionary, you're stopping every other word, you're not going to enjoy that process, and you're not ready for that level.
Don't read Billy and His Blue Ball before you've done Jane Goes to the Woods.
Thank you, Ben. Literary writing can sometimes be of a more complex nature. I think we have talked about this before. For example, Game of Thrones is surprisingly accessible language. It's not too complex. It's what another of our contributors have described as the stuff you're looking for is airport literature or airplane books. Darren Brown books, for example, are not that difficult to get into because their use of language is not too complex.
The Millennium Trilogy wasn't that difficult either.
There you go.
That's what it's called, isn't it? Right, the girl with the dragon tattoo. These
that's
books,
the one.
They're
that's
not.
The one, yeah.
They're not too difficult.
So do not be put off. We have an expression in English: never judge a book by its cover. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. But at the same time, do not be deterred from a book by its thickness. A big wedge of pages, like a fist of a book you have to stretch your whole hand around, might not be as intimidating as it first looks, unless it's written by a early classicist Russian writer.
I would also add to Claire's original advice of vocabulary. Always keep your little notebook that you can fit into your pocket with you at all times.
Excellent advice.
You never know when you're going to
learn something new.
Learn a new word. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if you don't live in an English-speaking country, it doesn't matter where you are. Sometimes you see something in the paper or you see something on a sign or whatever, and you think, I'll remember that, and then you don't.
No.
So have a little book with you. Write things down. You might have a question for yourself that you want to think about, write down, and then answer later on. So
Claire mentioned not writing down translations, not translating your vocabulary. I would also stress write as much information about the word or the phrase as you can. Write down whether
use
it's
use it
as well.
Yeah.
But what I mean is write down whether it's when you write it in your little notebook. Write down whether it's a phrasal verb, a noun, an adjective, an adverb,
Absolutely,
and the context in which you met it,
and some synonyms if you have some, and antonyms, and synonyms for the antonyms,
and antonyms for the synonyms.
Absolutely,
obviously that's all as clear as mud. There are, and for example, as teachers, we do have many students. It frequently happens. I'm sure you'll all agree. We have many students who regularly come into class and will say, "Oh, I heard this. And what does it mean?" And my first reaction is I do want to bang their head off the table and sort of say, well, what, you didn't bother looking it up yourself before you got here? My standard answer, and any student of mine will recognise this, is give me the context. Mm-hmm. Because the word hunt can mean different things in different contexts. Some words have different associations as well in different contexts, whether they use a noun or a verb. So do have the context in which you heard or met a word if you are going to understand it completely.
I do 4 things in my little book. I write the word in context, so I use it in a sentence. I write synonyms, for example. So if you wanted to say skinny, thin, come on, give me a synonym.
Slim.
Slim, thank you very much. Merrick, do you want to add one to that? Skinny, slim, thin.
I can only give you opposites, I'm afraid. 'Cause,
The other one is
I'm
antonyms.
podge.
So you'd say
podgy,
podgy, chubby,
yeah, chubby,
fat.
yeah.
And finally, I
Fond of the donut tray.
draw a little picture. So if it's a noun or if it's something that you can easily kind of explain with a little image, basic vocabulary.
Pictures are very good. Yeah, I totally agree.
If you can't draw, it doesn't matter. Do it anyway.
Yeah.
You.
I was going to say
Strange
something,
little
but
squeak came out
seems
there.
to have been a wee Scottish mouse.
it's a mouse. I was going to say something. It doesn't matter.
Could you develop that squeak into
It seemed to be a squeak of protest, Ben.
No, it wasn't actually. I was just thinking because when he was talking about drawing, I just remembered I had this
You
little.
can't draw.
No, I can't draw. That's
Oh.
true. I had this wonderful student when I lived in Pamplona, and she was just a kid. She was like 10, but every time she learned a new word, she never translated it. She would draw a little picture.
Excellent.
Without me, I never told her to do it.
Yeah.
She just, and her notebook was just full of words with little pictures,
Uh-huh.
and she would remember what they meant.
Wonderful phrase that relates to what you're saying. Different strokes for different folks. I mean, all of the advice that we're giving, everybody has their own way of learning and acquiring and recording and remembering information. So not all of these things will work for everyone. But I think one of the most important things is that you experiment. You try different ways of engaging with the language, and eventually you'll find a method that works for you.
And never lose heart. Keep the enthusiasm. If you feel yourself jaded, frustrated, or down, or exhausted, what tends to happen is your brain starts to build barriers to understanding. We've all been in those moments where our brain literally goes on strike, sits there and folds its arms and goes, I'm not going to do it. And your head just goes completely blank and you find a problem insurmountable. My strong suggestion is in your English time, if that happens, stop, take a break, step away, and let yourself calm down for a while and relax before you head back and go again afresh. Well, it seems, obviously, that Ben has been consistently contacted
was on silent.
throughout this pod recording
thought that
by
was you that was-
something really important. Would you like to share the information with the whole class, Ben?
No.
Who's saying what to you? Is it your mania
Is it
telling you to do
Post-it
more
lady?
shopping?
It's just my wife harassing me, telling
What,
me
what, do you want to share the message with the class? It's obviously so important that you couldn't turn it off while we were speaking.
It's actually about washing the dishes. It genuinely is. Which I disapprove of because I would never say dishes.
What
I
do you
don't
say-
know
what
where
do you
she's
say?
learnt
What-
that from.
Wash the plates? What do you
What
say?
would you normally say? Do the washing up?
Do
Do the washing up.
Yeah.
Wash the dishes.
Absolutely.
What does that mean?
I'm a man, I don't know.
Anyway, I would say that we have...
Ask your good lady wife about that.
Have I got a good lady wife? I do believe I just have a violent overlord and a wife.
We can,
You're talking about
I'm
Colin.
talking about my daughter.
I thought you were talking about the dog.
we can cut all of that.
We ain't cutting nothing.
Oh no, she doesn't
I'm
listen
doing
to
this.
this.
I'm
does she?
doing this straight up. We are literally about to hit the music. We have done it again, boys and girls. We have recorded solid, unedited half hour of just. I mean, it's not gold, is it? It could be.
I don't even think it's silver, Mary.
Could be
bronze,
green,
is it even
bronzy,
metal?
Copper.
irony, copper. Yeah, a half hour of solid English copper.
Well,
That's what we've recorded.
I would like to sign off with the fact that the tiny little bits of advice that we've given today are just the tip of the iceberg, and we will be recording
tip.
more of these episodes describing how you can improve and dedicate yourself in a more productive and efficient way to your English learning experience. Many more examples to be given in future episodes. For example, things that you can hear in episodes to come include
Sorry, I thought you were
Ben's phone.
I thought you were about to make a joke about the sound effects of Claire pulling up her sleeves.
So did I. That's why I said Ben's phone.
In preparation to get
And
the
Things
hell
that you
out
can
of
hear
here.
in forthcoming episodes.
Cans opening.
Ben eating crisps.
Wind, bodily wind.
Oh, I hope not.
Other bands practicing loud music through poorly sound insulated walls. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. We will provide you at some point in the year with another program with some charming little tips and hints. This year as well, prepare yourself, because one of our resolutions as Bulldog, not as individuals, is to provide some more grammar and vocabulary specific classes in the audio recorded form, especially for you.
And do check the attached information, which I trust will be a list of my links and websites that I think are very useful for English learners.
You just have to wait to find out. This has, as ever, been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me on this winding journey of English tip madness. Until next time, Ben, goodbye.
It's goodbye from him.
Claire, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Smile. He's waving.